Season 3, episode 7. I thought you were gonna say it with me. I feel left out.
Welcome
to
the Energy and Heart Podcast,
hosted by
Jiggy
and Steph. I almost said featuring.
Why can't we get this right? Like every time. Just very smoothly.
It's a signature part of the podcast now.
It's not even on purpose. We really want y'all to know. But we have an idea for the intro for the next season.
Uh-huh.
It's a cute one.
It's a cute one. We'll let y'all know.
So, how was your weekend?
Wow, thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Well, I haven't talked to you about this. My parents met KDo's mom and his aunt this weekend. So I've met KDo's family before. I think I've talked about it already, but yeah, I think I was feeling a little nervous going into this. Not because I don't believe that they wouldn't get along, but it's just like, the first time meeting kind of nerves. And I think I don't know. I just didn't know, or I wasn't sure what to anticipate they would connect on, what they would talk about. But I think something that was really cool was that it was really easy. Like, it was really easy. It felt okay. I can't speak for them, but it seemed like it was really easy. I don't think that KDo and I actually really like facilitated much conversation. Maybe at the beginning, like a little bit, but yeah, they my parents of course were like 10 minutes early to dinner. They're literally always early or on time. And then all of us were like a tad late. And once my parents got the table, once KDo's aunt and his mom came in, they just started speaking in Viet. And there's just something about that I was like, wow, this feels very at home. And I was just like, oh, this is weird, because usually like I'm listening to them like separately. Seeing them all in the same room was so cool. KDo's mom is already retired. My dad is actually gonna retire this June, and so they were just talking about retirement, like, what do you want to do? And he talked about like wanting to travel, wanting to take like pictures. I think photography is actually something that my dad's always been interested in, but like never really had a chance to explore. And like KDo's mom is into photography, so she's a photographer, so like they really connected over that. And then they also connected over Noah. So I've obviously brought Noah to both. Noah's my dog. To both houses, and so they just bonded over like how they didn't like him at the beginning and like how now they do. And they also chatted towards the end. Like, it was the situation where like dinner was already over and they were still talking. Aww. Like, kind of thing. I was like, oh, this is actually really sweet.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, they talked about like, what islands they went to after after the whole like Vietnam War situation, and like where they essentially landed off their boat. And I think my mom and KDo's mom were actually on the same island, but just like I think 100 boats away from each other. So like KDo's mom got there first, then my mom did. And so they were like chatting about their like immigrant, like refugee story basically, and I just thought that was really connecting. I think I get the sense it was connecting for them, but I think for me, I was just like sitting back and just thinking like, oh my god, this is like watching the storyline of like my heritage like in front of me, and like there's so much richness, I think, to the stories they were telling, and it just made me think like, man, like I gotta spend more time with my parents and with KDo's family to just like sort of like hold the stories, because I feel like we come from like you say the story so often, right? You say like, oh yeah, like my parents are boat people, and it just becomes like, oh, my parents are boat people, and you don't, and after a while when you say it, like at least for me, like I feel like I've lost touch like with what that actually means, like what they actually went through, like what sacrifices they actually like made. I've always known that like as a like, oh yeah, I know they've made a lot of sacrifices, but like hearing it again, I was just like, oh, like yeah, I really felt like the extent of what they had to go through in order for us to be here. And so I just left thinking like what a miracle it is like that, you know, they were able to be here, they were able to successfully raise kids, that KDo and I happened to meet, and then like now we happen to be here at this like dinner. And I think it was also really special that like KDo's aunt was there. He was raised by really strong like women, and when I saw his mom come in, I was just like, that's the matriarch right there. Like that's like that, this is like where all of, like this, like she's the oldest like in the family, and I was just thinking like, wow, like she really raised her son, and I'm just like, I'm dating someone who like just I have a lot of respect for the way that he was raised. And that's why I like really adore him. I think he has a lot of respect for women, and like that's a big part of like why why we date. Like I think there's a lot there that I think is not really understood by a lot of previous people that I have dated. So yeah, long-winded story to an explanation to just say that it was a really sweet meeting. I could really see them continuing to like spend time with each other, and I think I just feel relieved that they finally like met, and that it's not just, it's not some like weird like, oh, she has parents and he has, parents and family, and now we can actually like plan future hangouts and stuff. So yeah, that was really, that was it.
That's so sweet.
I know I texted you a little bit, but but yeah, that was actually like how it went.
My gosh.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. Ugh. I've experienced both of your guys' parents like but separately. And I think this checks out because like I love your parents. I was gonna actually tell you yesterday I miss your parents and I wanna see your mom soon.
They wanna see you too, by the way.
But like they're so welcoming. They're so generous. They're so kind. They're so welcoming. Your dad's so funny. And then KDo's side of the family, they're also so welcoming. They're also quite funny. And they're just like, I've witnessed them and experienced them separately, and it's been so wonderful. And to like have them in the same table and for them to have like a common story almost that they share, like that's only a memory and experience that only they get to share. Like we don't know anything. But they experience similarities in that together, and I think that makes it just that much more special too. And I mean, now they both have now they all have people to hang out with, because I think that maybe they'll find each other to be super cool, maybe like KDo's mom's gonna want to take pictures of your mom's like breads or something, No, that's so sweet. And KDo is, he's just a one of a kind dude, and like I can't imagine, maybe like a sense of pride almost with KDo walking into a room with his mom and his aunt, and they really are like very strong women. And man, you got a good one. Like I mean KDo does too, and we all know that, but like you got a good one. And I think that when it comes to having a partner who not only like respects women but like really uplifts women, like really like raises them and praises them, like, no, I really ain't nothing without women. Like to see women as queens, and like to know that he ain't just with just anybody, but he's with the queen. Like I think that's different than just dating a dude who just kind of is like, oh yeah, women are cool. Like there's got to be a difference. And that's why I love my friend Terrence so much. He's like Terrence is the biggest feminist I know. And
new
like,
character?
Huh?
New character?
Oh, have I never talked about Terrence? New character!
Wow, we're introducing a lot at the end.
I never talked about Terrence? That's crazy. But yeah, that's so sweet. I'm so happy for you guys. Oh my god. Thank you. It seems like just yesterday, season 1, we were like, oh yeah, Steph and KDo. They're dating. I remember when it was a secret. And now
it's not.
Wow.
More to come.
These podcasts really be like a vlog. Like,
Yeah.
the storylines keep developing.
Yeah. It sometimes kind of freaks me out. I forget who I was. Oh, I was talking to someone in RBTL, my friend RBTL, and she was just like, we got into the subject of like people knowing details of our lives because we put it out, like me and you do this podcast. I think sometimes I get shook when people know details about my life. Where the hell did you get? Oh, here, like on the podcast, because I said it. It came from my mouth.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But there's still so much you don't know.
Yeah.
Just when you think that you got us figured out.
Tune into next season.
Next season, y'all, we already got that. We already know what we're gonna talk about.
Do you want to talk about your weekend? Do you want
My weekend, the only thing that I will talk about is Jamie's birthday. Our lesbian friend Jamie
from season 1?
It was her birthday celebration, and Jamie, like, her, whenever she hosts like a gathering, whether it's an event or whether it's just a hangout, is always so intentional, and I love it. And I always get so much from it. I always have a really nourishing time. And this year, her birthday was at a park and had a little picnic. And like, of course, like, regular people would be like, oh yeah, picnic, bring the food. No, she brings this blow up rainbow thing that took like 3 people to blow up, and it was like so hard for them. They nearly passed out. But she had this like rainbow floaty thing with clouds, and it was just so cute. And then she brought bubbles, because why wouldn't you bring bubbles to a birthday picnic, you know? And so then you bring the bubbles and you bring the rainbow and the clouds, and then you have a photo shoot, and it's just like bubbles with the most incredible weather and with the sun beaming, and then there's this rainbow, and it's like the gayest thing ever, but it's so wonderful. And then her friend brings these unicorn horns instead of like the party hats. It was unicorn horns. So now you got these like unicorns with bubbles and rainbows, and then there's like 4 dogs. Wow. And an abundance of food. You tell a bunch of Asians, oh yeah, bring food to share at a picnic. What do you think is gonna happen? You tell a bunch of Asians to bring food to share, it's a feast. It's a buffet. Like, do we bring one kind of sandwiches? No, there was like 4 or 5 different kinds of sandwiches. Do we bring snacks and chips? No, there's like so many. You want drinks? Oh, here's all different kinds of sparkling water, a whole cooler. And everybody bought blankets, but of course, like, it fits everybody and then some. It was so awesome. I had such a great time. It was like, and it was on a Sunday, and everybody was talking about how they weren't having like the Sunday scares where like they're not looking forward to Monday thing. Like, everybody was like feeling relaxed and nourished. The weather was crazy nice, and yeah, it was such a good time. Such a good time.
Yeah.
Oh, and then she brought kimbap, and then my dog like licked the whole row of it. I felt so bad. The dogs had a great time. They stole food from everybody.
Yeah.
Sandwiches, pizza off of plates. Everybody had a great time.
It was so perfect, I think, for just like what Jamie, I think, as a person just like represents. Like, she even asked, like, all she asked was just like bring something to share, and we're just gonna bask in everyone's presence and like the sun. And I was just like, there's something about this that just like really eases my soul.
Yeah.
Like, versus like, okay, you gotta get dressed up like at this time, can make it to the club, like grab the cake, all that stuff. I'm just like, is this what adulting, is this what birthdays look like after 30?
Jamie's so good at like making magic out of something so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it only had to be a picnic.
Yeah.
Like, nothing else had to be added on. And I'm sure even if nothing was added on, it would have still been wonderful. But like, the picnic, to show up to a park, and then here's a rainbow and bubbles, and it's so
and
magical. Tattoos.
Yeah.
And it's so magical.
Love it.
So simple, so easy, yet, wow,
so impactful.
Such a great experience. That That genius.
That magical unicorn, Jamie.
Anyways, happy birthday, Jamie.
We love you very
She only
much.
just started listening to our podcast. She was like, I admit, I've been kind of sleeping on y'all. But I finally started listening to the CEOs. Anyways, today's topic. I like this one because I talk about it a lot. I want to talk about the importance of what you attach your name to. So whether it's work, it's the work that you dedicate yourself to, your craft, your mastery, your day-to-day, even if it's a hobby, your passion, whatever it may be, when you attach your name to it, when you attach your name to your efforts and the results, how can that differentiate the success rate versus kind of like half budding the efforts into things? Even in relationships, whether it's friendships, romantic relationships, networking, who you do business with, who you collaborate with anything. When you attach your name to that relationship, it doesn't matter if that person is that person. Whatever that characteristic of that person is, whatever the integrity of that person is still going to reflect upon you because you are placing your name to that connection, to that relationship. So at the end of the day, whoever is in your circle actually still impacts the future of you a lot. Because if one person in your circle slips up, it's very possible that it can bleed into everywhere else. And so yeah, with anything, just how serious that is and how important like ownership is when it comes to like owning up to your mistakes to make sure that it doesn't bleed into anybody else. And especially if you're a leader and you have a company, but then you might mess up too, like that means that all of your employees are impacted by it. Examples are if you watch Kevin Hart's doc on Netflix, it shows like the impact of how he stepped down from the hosting the Oscars situation because people dug up his past about his comments about the gay community and things like that. The way that he was responding to that situation, and he wouldn't like listen to his PR person, the impact of that, he thought it was only about him and he was defending himself. He missed the big picture of it actually impacts his entire team. Everybody's like, how can you work for this guy? You're gay too. How can you possibly work for this guy? Like it impacts everybody under you too. And then also this is inspired by, like the last episode we talked a little bit about beef, but since we talked about it, we always record these sessions like a week in advance. And so by the time like we were already done with the recording, all this stuff about him whose name I won't say, it all kind of like started to come out. And now, at first people were like talking about how brilliant beef is, but then ever since the whole thing came out, it's now become all about him and how it's like a bad apple. And it's unfortunate, but because of that, because of casting him and having him involved in this project that's really wonderful, it's possible that it'll interfere with the future opportunities and rewards for A24 or for beef in this show because of that decision that they made to work with him. And that's just kind of an example, but that's how I'm going to kick it off. Does that set you up for success?
Thanks for sharing that. I think something that I have always admired about you is that you take yourself really seriously. I think that that's something I'm still like learning about myself. It's just like I feel like I don't take myself seriously enough. And I learn a lot from the decisions that you make. Like, when we work together, you're just like, hey, I want to hire like this person or this person. And I hire them because of X, Y, and Z, and it's like very, very specific, that like what you're looking for. And I think I do think about that a lot too, but I never like actually like think about that as a core value. I think, of mine. And I think you verbalizing this, as I've mentioned before in the podcast, I feel like you verbalizing all these things make me realize, like, oh, what do I value? And so I was just like, wow, like, I really do value that. And I think, like, what I'm wanting to hear from you is just like, what are things that you like, like, what are the things that you look for in like collaborators and that you want to attach your name like to? Yeah, because I can tell, I mean, I could read between the lines too, just like you have a high standard for, I think, a certain level of like excellence, I think, in what you're who you're wanting to work with. And so would love to hear a little bit more about that.
I think for me, it comes down to like, what am I smelling from you or reading from you? Um,
Mm, the vibe check.
the vibe check, like Bretman says, it's got to be about the vibes. But I think like especially something that growing up in New York has taught me more than anything is to be really good at reading people and suss them out, and like really look into their intention of like, what do you want from me? And yeah, fine. Like growing up in New York and like always being skeptical about people and like looking at them left and right to be like, what do you want from me? Like, why are you smiling at me? Like when I first moved to San Diego and the neighbors would be like, good morning. I'm like, what? What do you want from me? But I think like first the vibes I think is really important. And then also me understanding that like I must know by the way that you talk, by the way that you present yourself, the way that you deliver whatever it is that you're saying, by the way that you execute, by the way you cross your message, whatever it may be, that you're not doing it for yourself, but that you're doing it for a bigger purpose. And whether that's for just people or God or whatever, like it cannot be about you, period. um for me, like it might sound like I'm doing it for myself because I'm talking about like the ways that I want to succeed, but truly at the end of the day it's because I believe I have an assignment, and I have to achieve that assignment to be able to help people in a massive way. And so a selfish egoistic person will never I will never work with those kind of people. I love community driven people who understand the power of collaboration versus like just trying to do everything on their own or trying to make everything a competition. I don't like that. Um, and like I'm not gonna lie, like certain views in politics does kind of matter to me because in the end, like if we're going to continue collaborating, I have to know that our hearts are aligned. And sure, that might not be the most sustainable way of going about business because at the end of the day, like it's in business it's almost impossible to avoid certain kind of belief systems and people and things like that. But if I'm going to work closely with you, we gotta see eye to eye on some things that are very important to me. Like absolutely there's no wiggle room for that. And at the end of the day, like there's plenty full of people out there, so I'm sure that I'll be able to find very talented, very excellent person who has the same views as I do. um I think overall, just integrity in general and knowing that you're dependable and keeping your word, you're consistent in your excellence, you're detail oriented. Um, yeah,
Dang, the
just
list goes on.
I mean, but
Yes.
these are the basics. I think like you
Yeah.
want to take yourself seriously. You
Yeah.
tell me that you're passionate about something. You tell me that you want something, and you tell me that you want to work with me. What makes you think I'm about to play around? So why would I want you to play around? It makes project completion so much easier, flow faster. Um, More brilliance can come out of two people taking something seriously and being passionate about it versus one person dragging you around. I should not drag you around. I shouldn't have to pull anything. You should be as dedicated as I am. And I hope that you're even more dedicated. Inspire me, motivate me to do something. And I think that at the end of the day too, like collaboration is about not being the same people in the same talents, but like fill each other's.
Complimentary.
Yeah, like I might see something you don't. You should see something I don't. I should have something skills that you do not. You should have skills that I don't. And that will create that magic and that excellence. And so yeah, like core values and integrity I think are just really important. But like everything that I said, I think are basics. Like if you're serious about this, I think they're basic. I don't think it's actually special. I think that it's what it takes. And if you want to play and you don't have what it takes, I probably won't work with you.
That was a mic drop. I was like, oh my god, what I'm gonna mirror. There's so many like different things to talk about. But I think the thing I hear the most is just like they have to be collaborative. They're like impact driven. They're also like aligned. I think in almost like passion, like feeling for what they like care about. Which this is why we work with you, Kev. Um, um but I like I man, like when I think about like myself too, like now after hearing what you're sharing, I think the bare minimum for me is like you just have to be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Like like you I don't want to say like you may not have the best skill. Like you have to be incredibly skilled, I think, to begin with, like for when I think about who I want to collaborate with. But I think more than that, you just have to be a really good person. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think like when I define it, when I say a good person, I mean you're respectful, you're communicative, you're thoughtful about the person you're collaborating with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the expectation, I think, of perfection in what you're doing. I do think there's a level of excellence in that, but more than that is can you facilitate the conversation to collaborate? Because you can be super incredible at your job and what you do, but if you don't communicate really well, if you don't
Mm-hmm.
set both of you up for success, I feel like you're a flop.
Mm-hmm.
Like and you're doing yourself and other people that you serve such a disservice.
Yeah.
And so I think about that. Like I think about the communication aspect being such an important part of like somebody's experience, I
Mm-hmm.
think, when collaborating together. So bringing back to taking us back to what you were saying earlier about like the beef like situation, it just makes me think again about like who you associate with like has to represent your values as well. And I think about like how I feel like, you know, early on in my entrepreneurship journey, I did not understand this.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think I covered a lot of things. 'Cause I know my name and who I am is associated with a lot of good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that because I show up like, you know, I show up communicative, I show up like, in integrity and all that. But I think that there was a time like in my entrepreneurship journey where I feel like I was not in in full integrity, and like this is just me in that beginning processes where you're still learning about what that means. And I think for a long time I would just only like work with people or things that I feel like were in alignment. But then what happens when you start working with someone that you realize, oh shit, like you're not actually in alignment,
Mm-hmm.
like with this person? Then like, how do you be with that? How do you rectify that type of situation? How do you go forward? And that's like when you, I think an example of this is like when you first apply for a job, right? Love the way the company's being portrayed, like
Mm-hmm.
love y'all have really great marketing, but really shitty like things behind the scenes. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who have really great marketing, but just like behind the scenes, they're not so great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, what happens when you're in that kind of situation, right? You apply for the job, you're super excited, you get in, you just realize like, oh, this is actually not the best type of workplace. So that's like I think a more common example. But I think about that in terms of like, for me, like earlier in my journey, I'm just like, when I was like collaborating people, I'm just starting to learn like, oh, actually, like we don't have an alignment in values, and like, what do you do with that? So like when I first entered, you know, that type of situation, I realized like, oh, I feel like at that time, because I was young and super naive, like I would essentially use my name to cover like what was occurring like in the behind the scenes, basically. So like people would trust me, and because people trust me, like I I put my name on the line in order to like cover. And it's the same thing like if you think about working at a company, like it's like you put your best foot forward so that, you know, your customers have have a good time with you, even though you know there's certain things in the back end that might not actually be in alignment. So like I think that's the first reaction that I think is very natural. And I share this because I think I imagine that a lot of us can be stuck in that situation where it's like it's not alignment, but you didn't know until you got there. And then when you got there, you're just like, oh shit, well, I have, in order to survive or live, I need to like have this job. And so I need to keep going. So I've like been in that situation before. And I think over time I realized like, okay, like there's nothing that is worth attaching to your name to. Like there's nothing that, you know, if you don't actually believe in the person or there's a misalignment, like it's not worth continuing to associate with that for whatever benefits that you have. And maybe it's just me drawing a really clear, very straight like boundary. Like some people have decided like, actually, I don't want to watch beef anymore because of like what has occurred, right? I'm not going to offer my opinion because of what has occurred. So I think about that kind of example. And I think about like for myself, like how it took me a second to like orient myself. Like I didn't know this, I think, until I was in a situation where I was like, oh, actually this feels very compromising. Like how do I be with that? And so there's I think a lot of internal wrestling that can happen when there's a misalignment, and ultimately how you respond to that is a reflection of what you truly like care about. And I think that's why ultimately like distancing myself from certain people in the beginning stages of my own entrepreneurship journey was the right move. But it came, you know, it can come at what I would call like a cost in some ways. It's like, oh, like I don't want to associate with this person, or I don't want it. So like, oh, I'm not, you know, I'm not able to be able to access their like skills or their network or whatever. But I think setting up that boundary creates space to actually find people who are in alignment. And so thinking about like when you're compromising yourself, knowing that like shutting some people out, setting that boundary is not a loss, but it's actually creating space for you to like find the right people to like work with, collaborate with, be in relationship with. And I think the same thing is not just relevant in business, but also in your personal relationships too. Yeah.
I mean, that's why Steph and I don't eat Chick-fil-A anymore.
That's actually a really funny example. So like, I never ate.
But yeah, I mean, like, especially with jobs, that was a really good point that you brought up about like the situation. I've been in that situation too, where like, you know, you create like, especially if you're front face, where you are like directly the face that the customers see, and then you're like a representation of the experience of the business with the customers, then like it's not like I put up a front almost, and that like I did really enjoy, you know, my job and things like that, but in the back end there might be something really toxic or really hard going on. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, we might hold on to that job and try to take everything with a grain of salt, or like, oh, hope that one day it'll get better, or like, oh, it's just right now that I have to deal with this, like da. But because we need the job, we think that we need the job because we need the benefits, we need the XYZ from the job, we like let it all slide. But that's exactly how capitalism works. We don't have to stay there. We don't have to stay in those situations. If we're stuck in a situation that we do not agree with, that we do not align with, we are allowed to move away from that situation and place ourselves, position ourselves into a better environment, because there is abundance of different environments. There is an abundance of different people and relationships. There's an abundance of different opportunities and people and so many different things. It's just about a matter of what are we showing the universe what we want? Like, what are we showing the universe what we're willing to tolerate? Because if we keep showing the universe what we're willing to tolerate, the universe will be like, okay, let me just give you more of that. Versus, no, I'm putting my foot down, I'm setting my boundaries, and I'm no longer tolerating this. This is not what I'm about anymore. This overworking, underpaid situation, this salary, done. This kind of work environment where it's a hustle culture and you won't let me sleep, done. Then I think that you're like, whatever your values are, it doesn't have to be those, but whatever your values are, you have to show the universe that you're serious about something, so that the universe will be like, oh, she, he, they aren't playing around. Okay, let me give you more of that. That's just what I believe. And last note I wanted to say about like the first thing that we talked about was excellence. Like, I don't expect everybody to be excellent. And I think that's what I'm trying to say. Like, you don't have to be excellent. You don't have to be perfect in order for me to want to collaborate with you. For me, I think it's not just about being excellent, but the pursuit of excellence. Like, I would rather know that you're willing. I think the hardest workers are not those who are like already successful, already somewhere, but the people who are pursuing to get to a certain point. I think those are like the go-getters, the hardest workers. They want it badly. They're still connected to their story of their why. If we're talking in jiu-jitsu, like, yeah, black belts will always be so inspirational, but you know what, the people who inspire me most are actually purple belts, because they work to me, they're the most savage, the hardest. They're figuring things out. They're no longer beginners, but they're not no longer like experts yet either. Like, those are the people that I think have like the desire, the hunger, the grit to like get somewhere. The excitement is still there, the energy is still there, and I think it's about the pursuit of excellence. I don't think that I have to work with people who are perfect, because I'm not perfect. But like, at least want it. Let's want it together. That's why I love you.
Oh, that's why I love you too.
Okay.
Well, on that note, we'll see you next time.
You know what I was realizing? Like,
What?
I was like, why do we cut our episodes up like by? We don't like.
Oh,
We used to
dude.
like. Thank you so much for watching.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Not just like shut the door on them. Like, okay, that's it. Bye.
That was like, thanks. Like, that's like giving that
Thanks.
energy. Well, thank you all for listening. We appreciate you all. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Asaboba. Bye.